So here's how it goes. The heroine of the story is on her knees with blood on her hands. She's desperate and holding on to her last breath, and she asks herself, what have I done? And what happens next? Well, I don't know how to keep the story going, but I've already written so much of it. I hear my younger sister turn on her other side as she laid in bed. She faced me while I faced the desk, which had been illuminated by the computer and the dim sunlight through the blinds. Are you playing games? I'm writing. Writing what? A novel, dear. I hope you're happy writing your novel. Thank you. I've always been quite the sentimental one growing up. It was no conventional compliment telling me to keep up the good work, but rather a simple wish of happiness, heard in a child's innocent voice. And that was enough to make me tear up. I always want to feel nothing when I feel too much. If it were possible, I'd hold my heart in my hand to make it still. But then again, what would there be to write about when you have a still stone heart? Quit crying. That story isn't gonna finish itself, sis. I know. I think I have writer's block. That explains it. Well, maybe in that case, you just need a little bit more inspiration. My sister, who slept soundly across the room, was 10 years old. Indeed, she was in grade 5 but acted more like a 5-year-old. Occasionally beaming with energy after hours of drawing and playing with her dolls, she would jump around and laugh to herself like a toddler. And at the age of 10, she's yet to learn how to open a bag of chips or tie her shoelaces properly. If I have to be honest, taking care of her is quite a task. But then again, I found joy in it since I had to do it as her sister. Through my troubles, though, there was someone who helped me. Gloria was my best friend ever since 7th grade. Between her and I, she'd always been the tougher one. Every time I had something to laugh or cry about, I knew she'd be there. And in return, of course, I loved to listen when she had something to share. At one point, it's like it's just her and I against the world. I took her advice and continued reading one of my many unfinished books in my room. I love the classics, but I can also say I do have variety on my shelf. A mix of local and foreign reads, both large influences on my own work. Wow, Jet. I thought you had better taste. But this is a classic. So are the Beatles, but that doesn't make them any good. Besides, you're just flipping the same page over and over again. I don't give up on books. If I pick it up and begin to dislike it in any way, I still continue. After all, isn't reading just peeking into an author's mind and vividly imagining the same stories they once imagined? That will always be fascinating to me, which is why I'm one to read something from start to finish. So far, I myself have written a little bit of everything. Fantasy, horror, suspense. But my favorite genre to write had got to be romance. Not only my favorite books are to blame, but the movies I grew up on as well. I'm talking about those pink-tinted movies filled with comedy and drama and holding hands while running along the shore. That's right, I like the cheesy tropes too. And those scenes, I sort of learned to incorporate in my writing. Then again, I suppose every woman just has a romantic in her. But now, only the mere mention of romance had me disgusted. And while I read my book, all I wanted to do was skip those pages of stupid, flowery dialogues. But whenever I get to the next page, I no longer know what's going on because I've missed something important in the midst of those ridiculous, romantic paragraphs. Annoyed, I'm left with no choice but to read them as well. Then, what has changed? How did I go from getting all giggly to detesting the very idea of romance? I experienced it myself, and upon experiencing it, It ruined every love story I've ever watched and read. It ruined every love story I've written myself. No more were those scenes of blushing or staring longingly when I realized that this was how it was really like. It was when I discovered I've taken a liking to somebody. I had known him only this school year, and it seems I've grown infatuated with him. But lately, he's been spending most of our vacant hours in school with a girl. This was unlike before, when he'd always just be laughing with his friends, talking about the lives of those who have lives. And with the both of them being popular, everyone's been spreading rumors about them. That would be no other than Blake and Vivica, and I'd be lying if I said they weren't a good match. Without knowing my irrational anger for Vivica, who has done nothing wrong to me, my mother pointed out that I am similar to her, and I saw it. We both had short hair, pale skin, a taste for dull-colored clothing. Perhaps I should have found it flattering, for I admire her looks, but the comparison between her and I only made me cringe. I'm not like her. I hate Vivica, and I don't want there to be any similarities between us. But no, I'm done saying I hate Vivica, or anyone else in school, or my hometown. If I claim to hate them, that would only mean I can't stand the pain or the loneliness, and I don't want to define myself in that way. I need to stand it. But then, perhaps I'm just angry at myself. I can't help but think that if I hadn't been so much of myself, I would have fit in. And if I fit in, I can be free of that lingering feeling of isolation from my peers. I could have gotten closer to Blake. I always thought not fitting in would make me stand out, but right now, there's nothing that makes me stand out at all. I'm simply outcasted. I know I've been through worse, but there's only so much regret in forgetting to keep yourself masked. Getting out of my thoughts, I took a break and tried another technique that might help with my writer's block. Composing something short but sweet. Something I could write in one sitting before I go to sleep. Like a poem. Perfect. I grabbed my diary and a pen and began writing, stopping once in a while to think of the rhymes. I wrote a short poem that would express my woes and what's been troubling me for the day. I felt proud, as it seems reading all those classic novels paid off and made my words more poetic. I read it again. I suppose it was a decent poem. Each line flowed nicely after the other. And I read it for the last time. It was terrible. Once again, I've written about the person who I am irrelevant to. When must I learn? It tells of my admiration for Vivica, except I disguise her behind a different name, which I usually do when inspiring my novel's characters by people in my life. In colorful descriptions and over-the-top comparisons, it tells of her beauty, her confidence, her contagious, hearty laughter, and it was ridiculous. I finally understand that forlornness that I only ever see being portrayed in those books I read. Supposedly, the reader either relates to it or wishes they never will. While I read such portrayals of loneliness, I never really feared it, thinking I'll never experience it. I thought I'd always be happy on my own, yet here I am fearing that my sadness is too obvious, and that I will look ugly in my anguish. I thought of the stories unwritten by time, the words that died with their poets, every tale kept hidden by their authors. They saddened me. I sympathized with them all, for I know I'm one of them. Writing is my dream, but I can't say with certainty that it would take me far, and yet I cannot let go of it, ever. It is said that it's best to write when you feel intense emotions. And I guess it is the case for many artists, as there could only be so many beautiful things born from sorrow. But until now, I still haven't thought of a way to continue my novel. The sight of it on my computer seemed to intimidate me, and I felt stuck. So if I couldn't write anything down at the moment, I thought something else might put me at ease. In the afternoon, when the sun no longer shined as cruelly, I made my way to the cemetery and stood before the grave of my best friend. Oh, Gloria, please forgive me for everything. I don't know what to do. I had to hold my tears back again when I thought I'd cried them all out the night before. I had no other friend to open up to. And while in a trance of my own melancholy, I caught a familiar face through the fences of the cemetery. He saw me too and approached. Blake? Jed, I was just about to go to your place. I left my charger in your basement. But if now isn't the right time, though. No, I was just about to leave. Let me show you. Yesterday in the morning, Blake and I, along with a few of our other classmates, had a project to do, which they all agreed to do in my house. He did leave his charger in the basement, so I held on to it for a while. I walked home with him and told him where I left it. While he went into the basement, I'd gone into the kitchen. Now, if none of the books I read could inspire me enough out of a writer's block, I had to give myself something to write about. I went into the basement. To my surprise, he was reading the notebook where I wrote a few poems and plotted out ideas for my next compositions. And that was it. These are amazing. You should get these out there. I read the poem you wrote me a few days back too, by the way. You've got a talent. As audacious as ever, he just turned the page and kept on reading. And that's when I decided it was now or never. I whipped the knife from my pocket and slashed, and everything that happened afterwards was almost involuntary. It was a blur, something that was almost otherworldly despite having tasted it once before. It was absolutely surreal, with the sound of the swishing blade and the scent of his blood with it splashing on my skin. My senses seemed to have been amplified. Gloria, I did something wrong. You have to help me, please. It's okay. You don't have to be scared anymore. Please don't cry. Jet? You take it. No, please, go ahead. I insist. That would be 500, please. Can't you have it for 430? Hey, you really didn't have to. It's nothing. And hey, that dress would look totally better on you. Thank you. Vivica?